Part 126. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1254. Chapter 1251. Is this Yangju Island so beautiful? Please vote. If Yangju Island is peaceful with singing and dancing, joy and peace, Gretel can push back and block, put up airs, and even show a little arrogance, just because he doesn't want to go to Yangju Island right away. Anyway, there is no shortage of him there, so there will be nothing wrong with him. His mother, the original mother, is still meditating in the ancient tree, and may not come out for a while. Other relatives? The presence of other relatives is probably not as good as that unreliable cousin. However, Yangju Island encountered a crisis, and the elders were busy packing their things and preparing to return. Even those elves who had just recovered from serious injuries were ready to return to Evermeet Island and join the battle again. Well, Greet couldn't say, "I don't want to go, I want to do basic research here." Where research is not research, there will be many sick and injured elves on Everlasting Island who need his treatment, right? Gretel silently nodded to Elder Fahim. He rushed into the research institute and began to sort out his research records. Onijin, release it. A team of skeleton soldiers given by His Excellency the Immortal, come out to work. Invisible servants, work quickly. Hey, fortunately Elder Fahim has upgraded the ancient vine bird, and the storage space inside has been expanded 10 times. Otherwise, the things sent by senior brothers several times in a row, the things given by the elders, the gifts given by elves and monsters, and these research objects, I really can't fit them in. Gretel hurriedly swept these things into the ancient vine bird one by one. Seeing that the entire research room was empty, he rushed into the next room and stopped suddenly. Hey, can these rabbits, these pregnant female rabbits, be stuffed with ancient vine birds? Even if it is stuffed in, it seems that there is no way to feed the birds regularly, add water to them, and shovel their poop through the ancient vines, right? Fortunately, Elder Fahim solved his problem. As soon as the elder gave the order, a group of elves rushed in. Each person picked up 2 rabbit cages and moved them out. When Ashuej picked up the rabbit cage, she turned to Gretel and smiled. "Don't worry, these rabbits are under our care, and we guarantee that they will all live well, no one will die, and each one will give birth to babies. It will never delay your research." When the rabbits, as well as all the items from the Medical Research Institute and the Radioactivity Research Institute, were packed and loaded onto the alchemy ship, Cyrilla also rode Shiloh and hurried back with Bernard and Apa. At the same time, the elves who were recuperating at the outpost had all boarded the alchemy ship and found their own rooms on the ship. These elves can escape from the secret realm of the elves and survive until they are sealed by Elder Fahim. They are all high-end combat power above level 15, and they are all talents that Eternal Judgment Island urgently needs. Although most people are severely damaged and need a period of recuperation, the success rate of restoring them to their original combat effectiveness is obviously much higher and the cost is much lower than training young elves. In the big forest, birds were everywhere, informing most of the elves in the forest for the elders. The older, senior forest guards with rich combat experience packed their things one by one, transformed into leopards, bears, wolves, unicorns or birds, and ran towards the direction of the forward post. Go home. Go home. Take the alchemy ship, return to Everlasting Island, and engage in a larger-scale battle with a closer relationship with the elves. After so many years of training in the big forest, protecting the forest, taking care of nature, and growing up for so many years, now it is time for them to return to their hometown and repay their tribe. The flames in the elven secret realm have been extinguished, and no twisted or contaminated beasts will break out of the secret realm and pollute the forest. The most difficult battle here is over. Leave the great forest to the younger and more immature elves. It's time for them, the veterans, to go home. On the morning of the third day, an alchemy ship carrying 4 legendary elders, nearly 100 elves, and a large amount of supplies rose from the ground. Spreading the wings made of branches, riding the strong wind, he flew towards the plateau to the west. Even if the alchemy ship, or rather the tree ship, contained twice as many passengers as when it arrived, Gretel's treatment had not declined. He was placed in the last cabin, which was narrow on the outside but wide on the inside, allowing for skylight and natural wind. The suite not only has rooms for Greet, Sarah, Bernard, and Appa, but somehow there is also an extra room where the unicorn Shiloh can rest comfortably. Moreover, in Appa's room, in addition to the original food trough, sink, and haystack for lying on, there is also a small bed, a set of desks, and chairs. Cecilia really likes you, and she is willing to provide convenience to you and your companions. Elder Melancilla personally led them to the cabin. Seeing the changes in the suite, the curvature of the corner of his mouth never dropped. Don't be busy doing experiments these days on the ship. Chat with her more. You can also chat with her about your oak staff. An ancient tree with a lifespan of thousands of years and has traveled to countless places. Even if you listen to her, more stories will be of great help to you. Of course Greed would not violate such kind instructions. After settling down, he hugged the oak staff, leaned against the bulkhead, smiled and closed his eyes. Hey, let's talk to the ancient tree together. If possible, you can also learn something from this ancient tree, such as how to turn into an alchemy ship. The leaves of the oak staff trembled, and an acorn popped out, hitting Greet on the head with a snap. Hey, 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 don't press yourself. Gretel rubbed his forehead a few times and threw the acorn to Sarah, so she could eat it herself or feed it to Appa or Hero. He grabbed the oak stick and shook it twice. I'm not asking you to turn into an alchemy ship now. The 13 leaves of the oak stick hung down together, and they rattled as he shook them. There was no response, and he looked like I am just a tree stick without emotion. Gretel reached out several times, wanting to simply turn it into a tree man, but he put it down several times. For one thing, I haven't learned the spell Enlighten a Tree Man yet, so I don't know how to cast it correctly, and for another, even if he is transformed into a tree man, should this guy pretend to be dead or not, should he answer or not answer? Forget it, just meditate. If you have time to get angry with this broken tree trunk, it's better to have a good chat with the alchemy tree ship. No, with Sister Cecilia. At least Cecilia likes me. Gretel put down the oak staff with an angry groan, leaned against the bulkhead, and closed his eyes again. After he breathed evenly and steadily and fell into deep meditation, the oak staff stretched out 2 roots and quietly penetrated into the gap in the cabin to make contact with the ancient tree. Soon, Greed felt a small star light up in the sea of consciousness. Oak staff also came in and eavesdropped. Really, it seems like no one can feel it. The corner of Gretel's mouth curled up, but he did not extend his mental power to communicate with the duplicitous oak staff. In the sea of his consciousness, a huge, thick, yet gentle voice sounded. Little Gretel. Cecilia, sister. Greed tentatively added the title. In the sea of consciousness, the gentle voice smiled softly, conveying a voice of joy and affirmation, like a warm breeze, wrapped in the fragrance of flowers and blowing on the face. Well, Elder Melancilla is right, this ancient tree, or rather, Sister Cecilia, really likes me. In this case, we might as well chat more. Sister Cecilia, what kind of tree are you? A large image came from the sea of consciousness. From the thick dark brown seeds held in the hand, half the size of a palm, to the seedlings poking out of the soil, to the tall and swaying saplings. As winter turns to spring, the branches are full of flowers, and the tall young trees gradually turn into old trees. Finally one day, a young elf with a beautiful face came to the ancient tree, put his hand against the bark of the tree, and chanted a long mantra. The forces of nature gathered together like crazy. The ancient tree shook its branches and leaves, and soon, a pair of smart eyes opened on the trunk. Are you the one who woke me up? Yes. Are you willing to be my partner and follow me to see the world? At the end of the image, all the memories turned into a gentle chuckle. Me, they call me, worry-free tree. It really lives up to the name. Just smelling the fragrance of flowers and listening to the laughter of the ancient trees, Greet felt as if he was soaking in a hot spring, and his whole body felt lazy. All the tension, all the worries, all the fatigue, are all gone. If possible, he just wanted to take a nap on the grass under the tree and let the flowers fall all over his body. It feels like after such a sleep, the exhausted inspiration will rise again, and I will no longer be afraid of running out of ideas for research. By the way, Sister Cecilia, what does Yangju Island look like? He asked softly in his mind. How big is the island, and how many places can people live in? How many elves are there on the island now? Who are our enemies? What is our biggest crisis? In the sea of consciousness, the ancient tree was silent for a long time. Then, another large block of images came through. For a moment, Gretel seemed to be on a huge airship, looking down. Forests, lakes, mountains, beyond the mountains, gradually decreasing altitude, and rushing rivers. Going up further, the view further expands. In the image, white sandy beaches, clear bays, and even looming and colorful coral reefs appear on the edge of shallow seas. Continue to ascend, and the panoramic view of Yangju Island appears in front of you. One south, one north, one broad, one exquisite, the two islands face each other across the sea. Around the big island, there are countless small islands scattered like pearls, adding a white border to the north and south islands. An ethereal mist surrounds the north and south islands and expands far outward. Looking out from inside the fog, the sky, white clouds, and sea breeze are all clearly visible. Looking into the fog from the outside, it was hazy and nothing could be seen clearly, as if there had never been an island there. Obviously, it is the elf who protects Everlasting Island and blocks the dangers from the outside world. What's even more astonishing is the huge trees rising from the ground between the South Island and the North Island. Two giant trees extend their branches to each other, and at the end of the branches, a rainbow-colored bridge spans high. When Greet looked down, there were elves riding unicorns, white deer, and various mounts, facing the sea breeze, breaking through the flowing clouds, and running quickly on the rainbow bridge. Is this Yangju Island? Greet admired silently in his heart. What a beauty! Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Asking for a guaranteed monthly ticket at the beginning of the month. Asking for a guaranteed monthly ticket at the beginning of the month. The cat must at least reach the top 10 on the fantasy monthly vote list. Now there are still more than 20 votes away from the top 10, this is related to the fixed exposure position this month. Everyone, please vote hard. Thanks to @Scarlacy for the 600 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1255. Regarding the appearance of Yangju Island and the general geographical environment of the South Island and North Island, the ancient tree Cecilia still has a lot to say. After all, as one of the most popular flying alchemy ships of the Elves, she would often accept requests from the Elves to fly in the sky. By the way, let the Elves on the boat hold the side of the boat and overlook the scenery of the island. However, when it comes to how many people the Elves have, Cecilia can't answer it at all. She is a tree. It's a tree. It's an ancient tree. If you have something to do, you can fly for a while. If you don't have anything to do, you can take root in the rich earth, bask in the sun, drink water, and sleep a lot. She only needs to look for the appearance and breath of the Elves and not attack them when they come over, look for the elf with whom she has signed a contract, as well as certain elves who often deal with her, and fly up when they ask for help. That's it. As for the population of the elves, why would she know such a thing? The elves themselves never count this thing. She once heard the elf elders complain that they wanted to conduct a household registration survey, but found that no one could be found anywhere except around the Elf King's court and the academy. Those elves are in the mountains, in the forests, on the islands, wherever you look, you can't find them, and you can't even call them out. When some elves give birth to children, they will send the young children to the academy to be taught by knowledgeable elders. Some elves pay more attention to the family atmosphere. They must keep the children with them so that the whole family can live in harmony together. What? Children need better education in order to grow into strong people and live a better life. Life is very good now. Live in nature. If you want to eat fruit, go pick it. If you want to eat meat, go hunting. If you want to live in a house, go discuss with the trees and let the trees weave into a tree house. Anyway, every elf is born close to nature, and what he needs is inexhaustible. Is there anything that he must become a strong person to get? Haven't you seen those elves who have become strong, rushing to the royal court and the academy one by one, leaving Yangju Island to go overseas and not come back for 10 years, 100 years, or hundreds of years? What is the use of such a strong man who works so hard to raise a child, only to have his flesh and blood separated and not to be seen again for hundreds of years? Everyone crossed the Sea of Storms, moved to the forests of the New World, and then moved to Yangju Island, just to live a carefree life. Let those elves who want to fight do it. Those who don't want to fight, plant flowers and trees every day, collect fruits to make wine, play the piano under the moonlight, and invite the girl you love to dance. Isn't it good? Gretel could only smile at Cecilia's complaints. The Elf King's rule over the tribe is probably very different from that of the human kingdom. At least, Gretel couldn't imagine that the Elf King's court would tax ordinary elves. Maybe, it's not like humans, who forcefully recruit soldiers from ordinary elves to fight, conquer, resist, etc., right? After all, the strength of these idle elves grows very slowly, but in the extraordinary world, a level 10 master can crush 100 level 5s with his eyes closed. Let the elves who want to lie down, and let the elves who want to forge ahead. Above level 10, above level 15, all the way to legend, the scenery at the top is so beautiful that a large number of elves will fight for it. Greed talked with Cecilia for a long time while meditating, and then turned to ask her about the details of the alchemy ship. With this question, Cecilia became even happier and quickly sent over a large number of details. How to bend one's own tree trunk, how to adjust the shape of the boat according to different flight requirements, floating on the lake, surfing the waves on the sea, or soaring in the sky, climbing or landing, all have to change into different shapes. How to grow green leaves on the branches to absorb the falling sunlight and add power to the alchemy ship. How to stretch out strong branches, transform into sails or wings, fly with or against the wind. Gretel's eyes were opened. Well, that's all. He quickly burned this knowledge into the core of meditation, and at the same time established a connection with the oak staff, transmitting all of Cecilia's sincere teachings. Naturally, there were a lot of hoochie-hoo protests. Why do you want me to learn this? Why do you need me to carry this? I am just an oak stick, a small oak tree. The level follows the owner, and I am only level 13. It is completely unrealistic to expect that I can turn into a boat, carry people, and fly like an ancient elf tree. I don't want to learn. Before Gretel had time to argue with the oak staff, a chuckle enveloped his consciousness and pushed it out gently. In the haziness, Greed heard that huge, thick, gentle voice, leisurely. Little guy, don't make trouble, come, I'll teach you. The alchemy ship, the ancient tree. Cecilia carries the rising sun on her back and keeps climbing. Gretel stayed comfortably in the cabin, occupying a corner with Cyrilla, reading, meditating, and calculating. Basking in the rising sun and blowing the fresh breeze with a suitable temperature filtered by the ancient trees, if you are thirsty or greedy, you can just reach out and pick berries from the vines around you and pop them into your mouth. Well, thank you, Sister Cecilia. Gretel patted the cane and sent out a force of nature. The rattan swayed gently, blooming more flowers, and a faint fragrance filled the room. The flowers bloom and fade, producing small bunches of berries, like crystal clear red gems. Hey, if the elves were like this, they would be able to eat when they stretched out their hands, there would be trees for shade when they lay down, they would have the power of nature to protect their bodies and not be afraid of being bitten by insects, they would not be attacked by wild beasts, and they would not have any diseases. He didn't want to work hard either. Struggle. How comfortable it is to lie flat. Well, let him lie down a little longer. The airship continued to climb higher, rushing into the flowing clouds and plowing away the billowing cloud waves. Gretel was leaning against the window, half asleep, watching the sun shine a golden scale on the clouds, reaching out without feeling any coldness. The bright sunshine hit Cyrilla, coating the silver dragon girl's brilliant silver hair with a layer of light gold. Cyrilla hugged her knees and leaned on the window sill, basking in the warm sunshine, feeling a little dazed. Obviously, even for dragons who like high cold and snow-capped mountains, it is very comfortable to bask in the sun occasionally. Well, with such good sunshine, how high has it climbed now? 1,000 meters? 2,000 meters? Or 3,000 meters? Greet didn't know anything about meteorology, and there was no way to tell the current climbing height just from the clouds above the rainforest. I saw the cloud waves in front of me suddenly rolling, and a vigorous feathered snake jumped out of the clouds. Boom! 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 Dark clouds rolled in, lightning flashed and thunder thundered. The huge alchemy ship was shaken a few times by the cloud waves. Cyrilla was caught off guard and fell down from the window sill, hitting Greet head first. Ayo! Gretel didn't even have time to hold his head, and was immediately knocked down by Cyrilla. A hard forehead hit the bridge of his nose. As soon as Gretel closed his eyes, he was ready to cry out in pain. Hey, doesn't it hurt? Looking carefully, two vines went up and down, wrapping around Cyrilla's waist and shoulders. Although it failed to stop the silver dragon girl from rolling off the window sill, it cushioned her strength well enough to prevent her from smashing the bridge of Greet's nose. What kind of automatic response safety measure is this? Sister Cecilia, you are too considerate. With this kind of protection, there is no need to sit in your seat and wear a seat belt all the time, and there is no need to broadcast in the cabin the plane encounters airflow and will continue to be turbulent. Please fasten your seat belts. He held Cyrilla, helped her adjust her posture, and looked out side by side. In the clouds, the wings of the feathered serpent spread out, the brilliant metallic luster flowed freely, and it rushed towards the lightning without fear. Gretel, wow! Fortunately, he was in the ancient tree alchemy ship at the moment. If he were flying alone outside, he wouldn't be able to handle such a thunderstorm, and he wouldn't be able to handle such a feathered snake. Therefore, advancement is also useful. If you reach the legendary level, you can fly freely in such clouds without worrying about anything. The alchemy ship sailed hard for a whole day, climbing from the hinterland of the elf forest to the high mountains on the southern edge of the New World. Early the next morning, when the morning light illuminated the snow-capped mountains, the alchemy ship had quietly landed and stopped outside the mage tower of Archmage Baebo. Greet happily jumped out of the side of the ship, followed a branch specially spread out for him, and slid to the ground with a thorny sound. Senior brother! Senior brother, I am going to Yangju Island. What? Go now. Archmage Baebo carried his robe and hurried out of the mage tower. The one who rushed faster than him was Archmage Hines of Black Crow Swamp. This mage jumped out directly from the window of the mage tower. 18 high-level ghosts formed a black cloud and held him firmly. Can't it be a little later? We just communicated with Nevis 10 days ago. Your electron microscope is estimated to be ready in another 2 months. You can get it in another 3 months. Ah, the electron microscope. Gretel subconsciously stood on tiptoes, stretched his neck, and looked toward the northeast. He glanced longingly and sighed. But there's something going on over at Yangju Island, so we can't delay any longer. He looked around and saw Archmage Baebo running out, and immediately grabbed him. It is said that there is something wrong with their Well of Eternity. If you are interested, senior brother, I will see if I can help you get a chance to take a look. Archmage Baebo's eyes immediately lit up. The Well of Eternity. The Well of Eternity. The Well of Eternity is directly related to the radioactive materials he is studying, and to the mysteries of atoms. Little Greet. You are so awesome. Senior brother, my love for you is really not in vain. As soon as he nodded, Gretel rushed towards the alchemy ship. While running, he waved his hands and shouted. Elder. My electron microscope will be ready in a few months. Can you let them send it to me then? He pointed with his backhand, and Archmage Baebo and Archmage Haynes, standing side by side, were clearly in sight. On the bow of the boat, Elder Fahim's face looked as if he had been hit in the head. He inhaled and exhaled, but was reluctant to scold Gretel. He adjusted his breathing several times before raising his voice. Your senior brother can do it. Others can't. The second monthly ticket edition is completed. Tomorrow from 1400 hours to 1400 hours the day after tomorrow, Mau Mau will go to the guide and recommend it, and strive to add 10,000 words for 2 consecutive days. Beg. Moon. Ticket. Thanks to @Ting07518 for the 1,500 starting coins. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1256. This is the sea route from Nevis to the New World. This is the sea route from the New World to Yangju Island. This port is further north than ours. It is in the territory of the Governor-General of Pelu. If you start from here, senior brother, you may need to correct the channel. On the top floor of the Mage Tower, Greet took out the pendant left to him by his original mother, activated the light and shadow on it, and carefully explained to his senior brother the route to the Elf Island. Well, there is a parliament, so we still have to talk about it. The map in the hands of senior brother may not be as detailed as what is recorded in the pendant. Sail straight to the west. There is a sickle-shaped island here. There are 2 bays and a lagoon on the island, where you can replenish fresh water. This island is also the gateway to Yangju Island. As long as the gatekeeper sends a signal, someone will take you. Passing through the mystery. The way to identify the stars on the road, the way to measure the stars and calculate the distance, the stars here are very different from those in Nevis. Senior brother, you should remember it carefully. Ashmoon Song sat boredly at the window of the Mage Tower. Really, what's the point of leaving her here to listen? Ask her to check for Gretel's mistakes and correct some mistakes. She has not been back to Yangju Island in so many years, and she has only taken the ship from Yangju Island to the New World once. And it's not like she can sail a boat, recognize the stars, control the sails, etc., she doesn't know how. Little Greet is so well behaved, he won't say nonsense about things that shouldn't be said. Gretel talked with Archmage Baebo for a full day, and the elf elders also took advantage of this day to have secret talks with the sun god. About the elven secret realm, about the ores in the secret realm, about the glorious holy sea, and about the magicians. Of course, the elders must make arrangements for the children who stayed in the big forest before leaving. Facing the possible invasion of the glory Holy See, the Sun God and his kingdom are the strongest reinforcements that the elf elders can find. Early the next morning, the elf alchemy ship unfurled its sails again, jumped over the forested mountains, and glided down from the backbone of the earth. Gretel was sitting at the breakfast table, listening to Elder Melancilla chatting. Cecilia is a lovely girl. She can transform into many different forms. In addition to the alchemy ship flying in the sky, she can also transform into a wider sea ship with a sharper bottom, which makes the speed slower. But the consumption is much smaller. Cecilia is so amazing. Greet put down the spoon and gently touched the wooden board of the table. Above his head, a vine swayed happily and handed him another bunch of berries. But if it turns into a sea ship, will it be dangerous when encountering wind and waves? Greet picked a berry from the vine, held it on his fingertips, and asked sincerely. And when the wind and waves are too strong, even if you want to fly, it will be difficult, right? Ah, don't worry about that. The elf elders smiled at each other. In front of Greet, the vines shuttled and weaved on their own, transforming from a ship with pointed ends and a curved bottom into a streamlined pointed shuttle shaped like a date pit. Submarine. Greet let out a low sound of surprise. Among the 7th level spells of the plastic energy system, there is also the magic of submarine, which can be attached to the hull of a ship, providing the hull with the strength to withstand external water pressure, and allowing the people in the ship to breathe normally. If it is not fixed on the hull, its duration depends on the level of the mage, which can last approximately 1 hour per level. However, this elf ship itself has clearly become a submarine in terms of physical structure, and the entire hull is completely enclosed. Moreover, its shape is already very scientific. How deep can this submarine dive? Haha, little Greet, if you are interested in the future, we will find an opportunity to take you on a boat ride. But we can't do it now. Now we have to rush back at full speed and we can't delay on the sea. Yes, those sea tribes are also very fierce. If we are attacked by them, there will be endless troubles. Speaking of which, when we go back this time, we must not see the sea tribes attacking us. Sea clan? What kind of sea tribe? What races do they have, what do they look like, and what are their levels? Are there intelligent creatures, are there magicians? Is there a leader, is there a kingdom? Is it female, male, hermaphrodite, or can it switch gender back and forth? Greet was extremely curious. Among the navy and sailors on the trade routes, there are also legends about the sea people, such as sirens who can sing and confuse people, octopuses that can drag ships into the water, or whales as big as small islands, etc. However, according to the official records of the Parliament, there are no intelligent races living in the sea, whether in the Sea of Storms or in the waters near the Blackgate Peninsula. So, did they migrate collectively to the west of the New World during some past event? Unfortunately, the elf legends did not satisfy his curiosity. After breakfast, the elders dispersed, meditating and studying. Gretel had no choice but to get into the study and study hard. At this time, none of the rabbits he raised had given birth yet, so he had no way to extract umbilical cord blood. Study, study. It's just a little bit away, Mage's Mansion is about to learn it. As long as he learns this spell, he will have a portable hospital that he can carry with him and last for a very long time. The alchemy tree boat spread its wings, sailed down the mountain with the wind, and flew towards the sunset's defense line. It only took a little more than a week. When Greet leaned against the window and looked into the distance, he saw flocks of white seagulls flying up and down. Are we almost seeing land? On the side of the ship, Gretel tried his best to stand on tiptoes and look out at the sea outside the ship. Now the potential energy of gliding down from a high place has been almost exhausted. They are less than 10 meters away from the sea surface, and relatively large waves can even hit the bottom of the boat. Looking down from the side of the ship, you can see dolphins occasionally jumping out of the water and the huge backs of whales. Some lively young elves will even jump out of the side of the ship, jump into the sea, take a good swim, and then fly back to the ship. Yes, Elder Masray walked to him and smiled happily. This elder, who majored in earth magic, was a bit unadapted to flying in the air and traveling on the sea. These days, he almost stayed in the cabin. However, seeing his hometown in sight, Elder Masray became very excited. Standing next to Gretel, pointing. "Did you see the place where those seagulls flew up? There is Qianshao Island. Not far from Qianshao Island, there is the mystery of Yangju Island. When we arrive at Qianshao Island, we will land and then sail across the sea. No more flying." "Of course I won't fly." Elder Carrion also walked out. This elder, who was profound in magic cultivation and even participated in maintaining the secret lock of Yangju Island, looked at Outpost Island from a distance and smiled proudly. No one is allowed to fly around in the Great Mystery Lock. Except in very urgent situations, otherwise, even if the legend returns, he must travel on the sea, and absolutely cannot wander around. The elven ship flew lower and lower, lower and lower. The hull became shorter and wider, and a raised keel appeared under the bottom of the ship, preparing it for contact with sea water. The cabin in the center of the hull is pushed to both ends, and the flat bows on both sides are raised high, drawing a beautiful arc. On both sides of the ship, the solid, broad wings made of giant trees and branches were retracted silently, and 3 tall masts were erected in the center of the ship. Greet concentrated on holding his breath, holding onto the side of the ship, and even spread his legs to take a horse stance, preparing to withstand the impact of the ship entering the water. Turning his head, Elder Colin next to him also grasped the side of the ship, concentrating and holding his breath. Gentle magic waves rippled from Elder Colin and from 2 other places on the ship at the same time. Gretel suddenly felt that his body was unusually light, as if he was about to float in the wind. There were waves of waves below, and occasionally small water mists splashed up and hit Gretel on the face. Under the magic of the elders, the entire ship was like a soft leaf, floating lightly on the sea, without even stirring up more waves. Greet even felt that he heard Cecilia's laughter. Falling from a high altitude is also a great burden for her. At this time, if we can help her, we will help her. Elder Melancilla walked out of the captain's room. She patted the side of the ship at her hand. Every piece of wooden structure on the ship was part of the ancient tree ship, to express her gratitude, then raised her arm and pointed in the direction of the outpost island. "Cecilia, let's go. Let's go home." On the 3 masts, dozens of horizontal branches appeared out of thin air, the vines were entangled, and the leaves grew densely, turning into 3 green sails. The green sails were filled with sea breeze, and the ship's hull shook slightly and moved forward at full speed. Sentinel Island is a small island with a curve of coral reef gently protruding from the water and surrounding a calm lagoon. When the tide is at its highest, only a thin line of coral reef emerges from the water, delineating the lagoon. When the tide reaches its lowest point, large tracts of coral reefs are exposed, narrowing the entire lagoon to only a small opening. Any violent waves will become docile when they reach here, allowing ships to anchor safely in the middle of the lake. On the rocks, there is a dazzling array of shellfish, crabs, mudskippers, and shrimps, attracting countless seabirds to fly around and save enough food for themselves and their families for a day. Normally, there would be several light canoes parked in the center of the lagoon. Once a ship returns or a guest arrives, the elves on duty in the woods on the island will send a signal to the inside of the mystery lock, and then paddle a canoe to guide the guests. However, this time, it seemed as if a violent hurricane had passed over the island. The canoe overturned and smashed on the coral reef, its fragments scattered everywhere. The trees on the island were swept by huge forces, some were uprooted, some were broken, and some fell in pieces. As for the elves who live on the island, there are no more elves. The elegant tree house, the blooming flowers in front of the tree house, the beautiful handicrafts carved from shells, the ingenious decorations arranged with pearls, were all crushed to pieces. The faces of the elders all darkened. The young elves looked left and right, but no one dared to disturb them at this time. Gretel saw a young elf next to him with trembling lips and whispering. Inan, Rockhart, Kara. Probably the name of the elves who live on the outpost island. However, no matter how much they talked and searched on the island, the missing figure never appeared again. The four elders filed forward and walked past the canoes, woods and tree houses, talking with the uprooted and broken trees, broken and fallen shrubs, and dying tree houses. After a long, long time, I sighed. They're not dead. They were taken. Chase. But. What's the matter, Greet? Elder Melinthera asked as kindly as possible. Gretel carefully observed her face. Something happened here. Where is Yangju Island? Where is Great Miss Wo? That's where the intruders go. Everyone immediately boarded the ship and set sail. Cecilia was slightly shocked, and a thin mist surrounded her, but it had been blessed with group invisibility. The alchemy ship moved forward at full speed, and not long after, the mysterious lock surrounding Yangju Island appeared in front of everyone. Around Mizuo, waves of blood were already rolling, and the sound of killing was loud. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Today's introduction, 10,000 words updated. This is the first update. There are 2 more updates in the afternoon and evening. Beg. Moon. Ticket. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1257. Chapter 1254. The Sea Clan is invading. Correction, seafood is coming. Updated 10,000 words. Update 23. The mystery locks on the Isle of Everlasting, when fully activated, are beautiful, very beautiful. From a distance, it looks like a rainbow has fallen on the world, and a colorful ribbon has gently surrounded Yangju Island. The light emitted from the reef surrounding the island, was refracted by the surrounding waves and fog, and turned into 7 color bands of red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. It reaches the sky and sinks into the sea. It seems thin and weak. It flows gently outside the island with the fluctuation of the waves. From time to time, a ray of light splashes out and falls in the sea water, blooming quietly like flowers. However, even if Gretel had not analyzed this mystery lock, just by looking at it, he knew how dangerous it was. Rainbow, in the magical world, has never just been synonymous with beauty. Rainbow haze, rainbow ray, rainbow halo, rainbow jet, all spells of the rainbow system mean trouble, big trouble. There are 7 negative effects as soon as you get started. Fire, acid, electric shock, poison, slowness, confusion, dizziness, petrification, confusion, teleportation to an alien plane. Depending on the level of the spell, what spells the caster has added to it, and the luck of the recipient, 1 or more are randomly selected. Of course, that doesn't mean it's over once you hit one effect. If you keep standing in the mysterious lock and fight to the death, you may suffer all the negative effects once or several times. The power of rainbow light spells is not limited to attack. The 8-ring rainbow magic wall has 7 kinds of protective effects in addition to attack effects, and can deal with almost all types of spell attacks. When it comes to the 9-ring rainbow light sphere, it is even more indestructible. Among the rewards the teacher brought this time, Song of Deep Blue was a mithril ball given by Ms. Helena, which contained 3 rainbow light spheres sealed inside. If the mystery lock on the Everlasting Island does not contain the power of rainbow light magic wall or even rainbow light magic sphere, Greet will definitely not believe it. But even so, it can't stop the wave after wave of attacks outside the mystery lock, like a mountain roaring and a tsunami. The alchemy ship was still more than 10 miles away from Mizuo when it saw huge waves in front of it. One after another, layer by layer, waves tens of meters high were crashing towards Mizuo. Even the seemingly intangible Mizuo was slightly dented by the waves. And every time the mystic lock dents, many silver-white lines rush out of the water and shoot towards the atolls outside the island. This is. Gretel blessed himself with the eagle eye technique and tried his best to look out. Before she could understand it, Cyrilla beside her was already standing on tiptoes, stretching her neck, and shouted excitedly. Fish! They are all big fish! Gretel squinted his eyes and finally saw those lines clearly. They were indeed big silver fish. Some have long and narrow bodies, willow leaf or spindle shaped, and some have round bodies, like a long, thin stick. When some jumped out of the water, a pair of wings suddenly spread out on their bodies, gliding in the air like a bird. Most of them were burned halfway through the flight, and their bodies were burned by fire, struck by lightning, spit by acid, attacked by toxins, stained with various colors, and fell powerlessly. However, there were still some who desperately rushed into the atoll, and then, the sounds of attacks and battles rang out inside the atoll. Is this the Sea Clan? Greet asked softly. The school of fish in front of him was not very large in terms of combat power, but the number was truly astonishing. He had stood here for less than a minute, and there were 5 or 6 schools of fish, with hundreds of big fish leaping from the air and jumping towards them. Locked to the mystery. At the same time, the sparkling silver light under the sea surface was flying, hitting the enchanted big fish, and there were no one knows how many of them. No, that's not it, an old voice sounded beside him. Greed turned around and saw Elder Carrion standing beside him without knowing it, with a serious face. These are just cannon fodder they dispatched, at most they are slaves. These fish schools are all consumables, and their main force is not here, our compatriots, our captured partners, they are not here either. As he spoke, a tern rushed down like an arrow and landed on the elder's arm. The elder stroked its feathers, talked to it for a few words, then turned around and said, "Come on, little Gretel. Let's see how many of these lawless robbers have come this time, take advantage of the power of the magic chain to weaken, and dare to rob Evermeet Island, thieves, robbers, thieves." Following the elder's command, the alchemy ship began to transform and take off. After walking around a small circle, Gretel immediately saw a huge whale floating outside the mystery lock. 3 sea tribesmen were riding on the back of the whale, shouting commands. The leader of the sea tribe had long wet blue-silver hair and held a coral staff. Every time he moved forward, a huge wave more than 10 meters high and dozens of meters wide surged toward the mystery lock. Just looking at the way he lifts his weight with such ease, even if he is not a legend, he is at least on the verge of becoming a legend. Beside him, one on the left and one on the right, were 2 sea tribesmen holding tridents, commanding the surrounding warriors. A dozen warriors, naked to the waist and with seaweed wrapped around their waists, were riding on the majestic and powerful fish, ready to go. Surrounding each warrior, waves surged in the water. Dozens of majestic nagas with human bodies and snake tails were holding spears and steel knives made of magic metal, ready to charge at any time. Further ahead, large numbers of fishermen were already carrying tree trunks, rocks, stick-shaped coral reefs, and swordfish mouths and other things, whistling and screaming, riding the tide. Forming a formation with them were large numbers of lobsters and fiddler crabs, waving 2 strong and powerful pincers, crawling on 6 legs, and bravely charging into the maze. The smallest lobster is the size of a mule. Its dark blue armor was hit by a fire bomb, but it only turned red, but did not fall down. The larger lobsters are as big as horses, and they supervise battles like officers in the lobster group. Their dark red carapace is particularly eye-catching. As for those fiddler crabs, although they are slightly smaller in size, their pincers and carapace are all shining with wisps of electric light. When they swing their pincers, there are rough waves. They really live up to the word tide. The dark blue backs of the fish occasionally flashed under the water. Under the fish school, there was still a deep and powerful magical reaction looming. Gretel tried his best to look, but he couldn't see what was there. However, just looking at the magic power fluctuations, there are at least 5 beings above level 15. The warriors surrounding the giant whale occasionally threw a spear. Judging from the power of the spear penetrating into the mysterious lock, it was estimated to be level 15 or above. Only Sarala happily lay on the side of the ship, leaning her head and counting one by one. Swordfish, tuna, octopus, squid, this one looks like a ghost snail. It looks ugly, but it tastes very delicious. Oops, there's a big clamshell underneath. A very, very big clamshell. Her eyes sparkled and she raised her slender arms. Turning his arms, he took 2 extra steps and drew a big circle. I don't know how many pearls can be found in such a big clamshell. I can have 1 more pearl chain, and maybe 1 more pearl shirt. If you break the clamshell open, you can make 2 bathtubs. Elder, when shall we take action? Sarala, please stop. There are enemies below, very powerful enemies. Don't look at them like you're looking at seafood. That one of us is trapped in a clamshell. Elder Carrion snorted with a sullen face. Sarala became silent for a moment, stared at the bottom of the water for a while, and whispered. Do you want me to go fish them out? Need not. Need not. 2 voices spoke in unison. Elder Masray also came out at some point, and stood shoulder to shoulder with Elder Colin, observing the battlefield in the distance. Hearing Sarala's words, the bearded elder who looked a bit like a dwarf turned his head, smiled at Sarala, and nodded kindly. It's just a legend of the sea tribe. He was promoted purely by living longer and eating more. He can't do anything except a few instinctive spells. Little girl, if we legends are here, you don't need to take action. Watch it. The alchemy ship suddenly dived. At the same time, the 2 elders, one on the left and one on the right, jumped up lightly. The moment he jumped out of the ship's side, a faint light passed over his body, and he instantly turned into 2 inconspicuous turns, one flying to the left and the other to the right, flying far away. Gretel held his hands on the side of the boat and looked out. With the alchemy ship as the center, the 3 legends opened an arc of several hundred meters, enveloping the sea clan in front of them. 2 turns rushed to the water, dove in, and disappeared. Soon, a furious wave rose outside the sea clan. The huge earth giant hunched its body and stood up from the sea. It's Elder Masray. Greet said softly. This elder who specializes in the earth element can raise mountains, guide rivers, and fill swamps by himself. But what scale does he need to summon the earth element to do? The earth elemental giant did not step forward to join the battle. It just stood there quietly while countless stone walls and pillars rose from the ground. The giant whale screamed in fear, swaying its body, trying to get out of this battlefield. Swordfish and tuna twisted nimbly, and the warriors on their backs slapped and shouted at them. And those octopuses, squids, and ghost snails were already spraying water jets one by one and trying to move back. On the other side of the battlefield, a giant tree, or a tree man, also emerged from the sea, stretching out countless green arms and pointing straight to the sky. Elder Carrion stood on one of the arms, with a serious face, pointing forward. Based on those stone walls and pillars, countless kelp and giant algae grew crazily. In a dozen breaths, the water, as clear and transparent as the sky, turned into a dark green giant algae forest. A swordfish hid a little slowly, and was surrounded by more than a dozen giant algae, and it was instantly entangled into a rice dumpling. It was wrapped, tied in knots, and dragged into the deep sea. Not even the sea tribe warriors on the swordfish's back were spared. And the giant waves summoned by the sea tribe spellcaster holding the coral staff had to travel hard among the seaweed that was more than 10 meters long, more than 20 meters long, and 1 or 2 meters wide. The waves hit the slippery seaweed, and most of the force of the impact was lost in an instant. The murlocs, lobsters, and fiddler crabs that were riding the tide lost their support, and their teams began to falter. This skill. It's really suitable for clearing out mobs. Gretel complained silently, his expression suddenly condensed. Under the fish school on the bottom of the sea, the huge shell containing the elf has begun to retreat rapidly. A water column shot out, and then another water column shot out, and before his eyes, it retreated to the edge of the seabed. Why? Gretel screamed. Next to her, Sarah was already leaping high, about to jump over the side of the ship and jump into the sea to grab her big shell. Don't worry, they can't escape. With a plop, Cyrilla was pushed back to the ground hard, and her feet landed on the deck. Idion retracted his left hand, tightened the elf moon blade that never left his body, and smiled at her. Look. With a loud bang, a huge stone pillar rose from the ground, pushing the shells out of the water like cannonballs. Dozens of long seaweed snakes flew out in all directions, wrapping the shell so tightly that it was impossible to even flap the shell. Float. Float. Featherfall technique. The elves on the side of the ship cast spells in unison. The alchemy boat rushed past and landed under the shell with a brush. It wasn't until all the preparations were completed that the shell with the feather fall technique landed lightly on the deck. Because of the seaweed cushion, not only did it not damage the deck, it also slid half a meter outward. The mast automatically deformed, and a dozen horizontal poles on the vertical mast bent at the same time, firmly grasping the shell and pressing it to the deck. Elder Melancilla walked out slowly and touched the seaweed outside the shell. Thank you for your hard work. Go back. With a series of swishing sounds, the seaweed retracted automatically, leaving only large areas of slime on the deck. The shell was tightly closed, and there was no water under him. He was pressed down by the tree man and couldn't move. Idion stepped forward and raised the moon blade. Are you going to drive it yourself or should I do it? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Today's introduction, 10,000 words updated. This is the second update. It's already 7,000 words. There will be another update at 8 p.m. Beg. Moon. Ticket. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1258. Chapter 1255 Cyrilla, Fish. Big fish. Fish. No more. Recommended 10,000 words plus update 33. Crunch, crunch. The big clam opened a crack tremblingly. Almost immediately, 7 or 8 branches stretched out from the mast and clung to the edge of the clam shell. Ignoring the pitiful cry of the big clam, I pulled hard. Opened. Opened. It's open, it's open. The surrounding elves cheered. Cyrilla shook her shoulders, almost pulling out an afterimage, and rushed to the big clam. The next moment, she let out a high-pitched scream, jumped out, and transformed into a dragon shape in mid-air. The huge dragon wings spread out to both sides, and the surrounding elves staggered, either retreating or falling to the ground. The wind howled. If Cecilia hadn't retracted the side of the ship in time and flattened it, it would have almost collapsed under her foot. Well. A burst of floral fragrance passed by. Cyrilla shivered, shook her head, flapped her wings and rose up. She lowered her head in confusion, took a closer look at the big clam, then folded her wings and slowly squatted down. What's wrong? What's wrong? Greet went up to pick her up immediately. Cyrilla shook her head vigorously and blinked. Strange, I just saw something terrible. This clam is a Moir Mirage. It has strong mental impact and illusion power. Such a large Moir Mirage is at least a high level 1, and maybe close to a super level 1. Elder Melancilla came over slowly, stood on tiptoes, gently patted the silver dragon girl's wings. If you were caught off guard and fell under its illusion, you would definitely be frightened. You need to practice more on your mental defense in the future. By the way, what did you see just now? Sirara was speechless. She turned her head and looked at Gretel. The remaining fear in her eyes had not completely dissipated. He closed his lips tightly and refused to speak any more. Melancilla shook her head in understanding and did not ask further questions. The elder raised his hand and waved lightly, and 7 or 8 vines grew out of thin air and plunged into the clamshell. The next moment, 3 unconscious elves were gently lifted out by vines. The elves swarmed forward. Inan. Wake up. Rockert, thank God, Rockert is okay. Kara is fine, she just fainted. A group of people scrambled to bring their companion back to the cabin for treatment. Another team of elves organized their team and jumped off the side of the ship under the leadership of Idian. Full of anger, he followed the elders to pursue them. I'm going too. Sarah flapped her wings and jumped up. Greet stood on the deck, tiptoeing, and it was too late to pull her. Cyrilla. Wait for me. Late. The silver dragon girl plunged into the sea, and when she rose again, her sharp claws had firmly grasped the ghost claw snail. She rose into the sky, hovered near the mystery lock, and released her claws. Mine. This is mine. There was a loud bang. The colorful wandering mythical locks rippled for a moment, and a breathless voice that had obviously lost its amplification skills came out from inside. I know. Don't worry. Gretel covered his face behind his back. Sarah, even if we are greedy for this bite, can we not show it so obviously? Sarah circled half a circle and then plunged into the sea. The silver dragon had already caught its favorite prey, and now it no longer concealed its aura and let go of its pressure. At this time, not only the fish in the water panicked and scurried around, but even the giant whale jumped out of the water uneasily, and then slammed into the water, causing a huge splash. The 2 sea tribe warriors riding on the back of the whale were caught off guard. They pounced down and grabbed the whale's saddle to prevent them from falling. Sarah charged forward alone, or rather, a dragon. Even though her level was not as good as Idian's, the momentum created was 10 times greater. The elven warriors followed on both sides of her, walking on the waves, stepping on the floating seaweed, or activating their flying skills, and rushed to kill her. This kind of battle, coupled with the actions of the 3 legendary elders, was simply devastating. In less than an hour, all the sea warriors riding giant whales, swordfish, or tuna were all hung on both sides of the ship, like salted fish hanging from the eaves of a dried fish shop. The gentle ancient tree Cecilia was also rarely angry. 2 rows of branches grew out of the side of the ship, pointing high into the sky. Each sea tribe warrior is provided with only 1 forked branch, one end is tied to their hands, and the other end is tied to their waist. No matter how strong the wind is or how high the waves are, make sure not a drop of sea water can splash on the sea people. Dare to go to the elves and rob them. Let you become a salted fish in the sun. In addition to the sea warriors, several particularly eye-catching monsters also did not end well. A giant king squid was cut into 70 or 80 pieces by its 8 legs with the moon blades flying in Idian's hand, and its head was hung directly on the top of the stone pillar. An octopus with colorful rings all over its body was frozen directly into the ice by magic. Gretel heard the 2 elves discussing in a low voice that they must try to remove the venom from the octopus, but they must not let it die before that. The Moir mirage that had imprisoned the elves was also moved to the shore. Under the scolding of the elves, 30 or 50 lobster soldiers tremblingly carried the kelp net and walked up with the Moir mirage on their backs. Udian followed and shouted, "Don't let it die. Be careful not to let it die. Give it more water. If it dies, the mirage will not look good. Giant whales, tuna and swordfish are treated much better." The elves showed enough goodwill towards these powerful monsters that had certain intelligence but were driven by the sea tribe. The alchemy ship floated leisurely in the water, escorting the giant whale into the coral island chain, and temporarily stopped in a lagoon, waiting for Wang Ting's subsequent processing. As for tuna and swordfish, these powerful fish need to swim at high speeds to allow enough water to pass through their gills and absorb enough oxygen. Therefore, they were escorted to another bay and guarded by a dedicated elven navy. Elder Mas Ray temporarily set up a magic barrier at the entrance of the bay to ensure that they could not escape. Cyrilla was disappointed. The fish, the big fish, the fish meat, are all gone. By the way, can those lobster soldiers eat them? This. Gretel was also at a loss. The humanoid sea tribe is definitely not edible, and the warcraft is of course edible. Are these lobster soldiers who are lined up in a queue, supervised by strong men, and can cooperate with spellcasters, within the edible range? Let me ask, I've never seen the sea tribe before. I really don't know what kind of species they are. Fortunately, Gretel won't have to worry about this soon. A gap opened in the mystery lock, and a crow with a wingspan of more than 2 meters flew straight out, circled half a circle on the bow of the ship, landed on the side of the ship, and turned into a male elf. Fortunately, you guys are here. Come in quickly. Come in with me quickly. Many compatriots are injured. The alchemy ship Sicilia narrowed its hull, flattened its bottom, and followed the small boat in quickly. The leather armor of the elf who led the way was damaged and stained with blue liquid, and several locks of hair had been cut off. He was chattering to himself. Oh, you are back. Fortunately, you are back. Recently, the energy of the mystery chain has been insufficient. It has been reduced, and it cannot give us much support. If it weren't for you, those stinky fish and shrimps would have washed up in the village on the shore. Is the situation of Mystic Lock so bad recently? Elder Mas Ray dismissed the summoned earth element. His face looked a little tired and he sat thoughtfully. The young elf who was leading the way turned around when he heard this, bowed his head and saluted him, and did not delay him from talking. I don't know the specific situation. I'm just a patrol captain, not one of Wang Ting's bosses, and I'm not responsible for maintaining the mystery lock. However, some time ago, I did receive a notice saying that the mystery lock's energy was insufficient and we should save some money. Use. Greet leaned against the side of the ship and looked up at the thin mist that filled the top of his head. Recall again that when they first approached, the colorful ribbons that surrounded the entire island could not be said to be towering, but were at least dozens of meters high. So here, what you mean by spending money is that the heating is turned on to 18 degrees Celsius and everyone wears coats and scarves. It's really economical. However, when the alchemy ship swayed along the waterway, past several coral reef passes, and finally stopped at the dock, Greet also took a breath of air. The vast beach has almost changed color. It should have been a pure white and delicate silver beach, but there are clusters of corpses of various crustaceans here and there. Lobsters, mantis shrimps, pippy shrimps, crabs, fiddler crabs, coconut shoes, hermit crabs, the murloc holding a dried fish spear, the murloc warrior holding a tree trunk, the murloc captain holding an anchor. Scorched, charred, carbonized, corroded, poisoned, petrified. If this beach were not covered with corpses of the Sea Clan, it would be almost the same as the Normandy landing. From the shoal to the front of the beach and then to the middle of the beach, sand dunes, rocks, and fallen tree trunks have all become fortifications for the elves to resist. In the woods at the end of the beach, a small treehouse is filled with light, surrounded by rainbow walls on 3 sides. Outside the rainbow light wall, the corpses of the Sea Clan were piled up in layers, almost as high as the roof. That's where we operate the mystery lock, the elf warrior who came to pick them up whispered. Many injured brothers and sisters relied on the support of Mystic Chain to evacuate to the back. Gretel kicked high and low, jumping up and down on the carapace. The carapace of these lobsters and crabs are huge, curved, and filled with a lot of mucus. Even though Gretel blessed himself with cat elegance, he still had to slip from time to time. In the end, he had no choice but to summon the phantom pony, turn over and ride on it, causing the elf who was leading the way to look at him several times. Who is this? Who is this black-haired half-elf? He couldn't even walk well, so why did the elders bring him in? Tisk tisk tisk, with such a standard, life on Yangju Island will not be easy. Where are the injured children? Elder Fahim's thick, snow-white eyebrows were already frowning. As soon as his mental strength is swept away, he should catch up first. Gretel urged the phantom pony to follow quickly. After bypassing the tree house, a row of tree walls separated naturally. On the soft grass, dozens of pale elves with minor or serious injuries lay under the trees, moaning weakly. Little Gretel. Quick, come and help with the treatment. Okay, elder. There was a flash of green light and the oak staff plunged into the ground. A screen of magical light unfolded gorgeously around Gretel like a dream. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. The above introductory reading of 10,000 words plus more is completed. The cat is working hard to code words, and strives to add another 10,000 words tomorrow. Beg. Moon. Ticket. Thanks to @Scarlacy for the 300 starting coins. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1259. Noriel Oakleaf is an elven spellcaster. Of course, his qualifications are not very good, and he is not qualified to stay in the Magic Academy or the Mystery Lock Corps. Therefore, after graduating from the academy, he returned to the village where he had lived since childhood. Assigned to this beach and responsible for daily maintenance nodes. Monitor the mystery lock for any abnormal movement, and open the door to your family when receiving the signal. Occasionally, if there are evil beasts with no eyes coming, control the mystery lock to kill them. Although you have to stay near the node all the time, the actual working time every day will not even exceed 2 hours. Noriel Oakleaf had no complaints about this life. It's close to home, there isn't much work, and although there isn't much money, there is almost no currency on Everlasting Island. Resources for practicing spells are distributed regularly. Moreover, there is a beautiful female elf, Odili Uixi, who maintains the mystery lock with him. Men and women match each other and work is not tiring. Among the young men pursuing Odili, he is the most promising one. Of course, the elves guarding this mysterious node only have a team of 10 people. Together with several nearby villages, the total number of male elves of the right age is only 20 or 30. What can those fighters bring to the table? The daily job of the 8 soldiers is to patrol the coastline around the node, which is about 10 kilometers on the left and right. At most, it's just to catch some fish, touch some shells, etc., and improve everyone's food. If you could get a small pearl out of the shell, you could make Odili smile. As for the corals, it is still a bit dangerous to dive into the sea to touch them, not to mention that many corals are alive, and the elves cannot break live corals. He had lived such a comfortable life for too long, and when a large number of sea tribes rushed over, Noriel Oakleaf was really in a hurry. So many sea people, so many sea people. Even though Misuo was bombing with all its strength, there were still so many murlocs and lobster soldiers rushing in despite the spell damage. Fortunately, although the mystic lock lacks energy, its various functions are powerful enough. Noriel Oakleaf immediately acted and sent an alarm to the surrounding area. Then, he said, "You are here to watch to Odili Uixi, who came in a hurry, and rushed to the beach with an oak staff in hand, fighting side by side with the soldiers of the team. 3 minutes later, an albatross and a peregrine falcon flew over the battlefield. When they landed, they turned into warriors and joined the battle group. They were the patrol captains of the 2 surrounding villages. They knew how to fly and were the fastest to get here. 5 minutes later, a snow crane circled twice and landed lightly. Norrell Oakleaf felt relieved. Thank God, the manager of the upper-level node and the elder of the town, Tram Silverleaf, has also arrived. Now he doesn't have to worry about spell support. Tram Silverye stepped directly into the node hut without saying a word. After some operations, the topography of the beach suddenly changed, becoming concave and convex. Many rocks and sand piles rose up, and many depressions were sunken. 15 minutes later, a leopard roared out of the woods. Before it could transform, it swung its huge claws and smashed the head of a lobster soldier. Within 30 minutes, 2 black bears, a gray wolf, and a white deer rushed out of the woods. They brandished long knives, opened sharp elf bows, or simply used deformed postures to rush into the enemy formation. Relying on such waves of reinforcements from far and near, it was only at this point that the alchemy ship arrived. However, the price paid is also huge. Under the shade of the trees, 40 or 50 elven warriors fell to the ground. Norrell Oakleaf lay limp on the ground. Looking left and right, almost everyone on the scene was injured. The better ones, like the casters like them, just had a few more wounds on their bodies. The situation was terrible, especially for the young men on the patrol. They had been fighting since the beginning of the battle, and their breath was already very weak. And he, Odiliuigzi, and Elder Silverleaf have all exhausted their spells and have no energy to treat them. He tilted his head and looked sideways at the beach in the distance. Thank God, help finally arrived. What's coming over there is, such a powerful aura, It's a legendary elder. Very good. A legendary elder, even if he was not specialized in healing, could heal dozens of them with just a wave of his hand. Norrell Oakleaf watched longingly as the white-haired legend approached. Then, he heard a voice that disappointed him. Little Gretel. Quick, come and help with the treatment. Okay, elder. What? Wouldn't the legendary elder take action himself? Norrell Oakleaf's heart sank. The white-haired legend turned his body sideways, 1 step higher and 1 lower from behind, and cautiously, a black-haired half-elf. How powerful can a half-elf's healing spell be? And judging by the clumsy appearance of this black-haired half-elf, who can't even walk well, he obviously isn't good at the power of nature. Okay, this battle ended so quickly. I guess the legendary elder also spent a lot of effort outside. I am very tired now and may not want to take action. Then, Norrell Oakleaf opened his eyes wide and watched the light spots of the healing spell falling like rain, and a dream-like screen of light unfolded gorgeously beside the young black-haired half-elf. Does this black-haired half-elf have something else? In the eyes of Norrell Oakleaf, the situation was very tragic, but in fact no one was in critical condition. Elder Fahim just glanced at it and called Greed to come forward for help. Spellcasters, especially healers, especially powerful healers with unique skills. He is popular everywhere, and is looked upon with special regard and even held in high esteem. It was rare that a large number of people were injured just after returning to Evermeet Island, although I was very embarrassed for my compatriots. If you didn't seize the opportunity and let Gretel show off his skills, what are you waiting for? Gretel did not refuse, stepped forward and raised the oak staff. In front of the patient, the oak stick did not show any dissatisfaction with Greed. He poked it into the soil and immediately stretched out several tree roots, firmly piercing into the soil, and the branches and leaves spread outward. Greed took a few steps around and put 20 steps away from the oak staff. At his current level, this was the maximum distance that he could link up with the oak staff's mental power to expand the scanning field. Advanced level 13 solidification spell appears, scans the entire scene, observes consciousness, electrocardiogram, blood pressure, breathing. Swish, brush, brush, a colorful light covered the whole place. Norrell Oakleaf looked at the burst of green light around him, with pieces of yellow light and individual red lights among the green light. Then he looked at his own appearance without any brilliance at all, and fell into silence completely. Those marked by yellow light and red light are indeed the most seriously injured soldiers who need treatment most urgently. The green one's injuries are minor. As for him, he just needs to lie down for a while and he will be fine. It doesn't matter if no one cares about him. This young half-elf has such good eyesight. Gretel. He thought the situation was so tense. As a result, the detection spell came out, yellow, 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 yellow. Basically no one lost consciousness. The injuries were indeed quite serious, but he was conscious, could moan, yell, and look at the healer eagerly. No, there are still people who don't look at the healer. That kid over there has 2 round eyes. Where are you looking? That's Cyrilla. After scanning for a long time, there was only one red sign that represented unconscious, breathing, and pulse, and the other half were yellow, seriously injured, conscious, and not life-threatening. As for the one who can still wave, call, and sit up with support, and his vital signs are stable, everything is painted green. Go aside, I don't have time to talk to you right now. Thinking about it again, this result is not surprising. It was different from the stampede he encountered at the Midsummer Festival in Heartland City. Elves are much more mentally powerful than ordinary humans, with average spellcasters per capita and natural walkers per capita. Even if there is not a 5th or 6th level priest, there is still a 3rd or 4th level. Even if it doesn't work, the most basic treatment of minor injuries can always be done casually. Don't underestimate this ability to treat minor injuries. Even the most basic spell can seal blood vessel damage and prevent blood from gushing out. With just this hand, if used correctly, critical injuries can become serious injuries, and serious injuries can become slanderous injuries. It won't be a problem. And there's also a mystery lock. Why is there no healing spell among the spells in the mystery lock? For seriously injured warriors, throw Cure Fatal Wounds and Cure Serious Wounds up in time and hold them properly. Gretel stood there, inhaling, exhaling, inhaling, and exhaling, feeling his mental power disappear like water, turning into basic healing techniques, and falling on the wounded. Just this group blood raising, not to mention serious illness, and saving the lives of these soldiers, there is absolutely no problem. Even if there is no breathing or heartbeat, and emergency cardiopulmonary resuscitation is needed to bring him back, and the on-site group first aid mark is black, Greet estimates that he can be dragged back a few steps from the Nahi Bridge. But now there is no black. Greet looked around and shouted. Elder. The red one. Okay, Elder Fahim had also been observing the injured for a long time. To be honest, in the field of vision of fate observation technique, none of these people were dying, but there were 7 or 8 with similar injuries. As for among these 7 or 8, which one should be treated first and which one should be treated later? Well, relying on his rich experience, he was able to pick out the red one and throw Cure Fatal Wounds over it first. But the little guy is only a fraction of his age and is only halfway to becoming a legend. How can he have such vision? Gee, this spell he developed is very good. Think about a suitable price later, replace this spell model, and popularize it among the elf healers. This spell has an outstanding effect on the battlefield. It is much less expensive than spells such as group healing for minor injuries, group healing for moderate injuries, and group healing. While thinking about it, he quickly cast spells and threw several healing spells on the injured person marked in red. Seeing that the injured person's bleeding stopped, his breathing stabilized, and his broken and twisted leg bones were pushed back to their original positions, the red marks on his body began to gradually turn yellow, then green. At the same moment, the marks on other people began to move and change. Some moved to the shoulders, arms, leg bones or ribs, covering the fractured location. Some moved to the chest and abdomen, outlining the shapes of organs. There are also some, firmly covering the head, indicating that this guy may have been hit on the head, and there may be a risk of brain hemorrhage. This guy has a fractured femur in his right leg. Help him set the bone, stop the bleeding, and heal. Pay special attention not to injure the femoral artery or other large blood vessels. No problem. Behind Elder Fahim, an elf healer ran into the scene. This guy has a fracture of the radius and ulna of his left arm. When setting the bones, pay attention to the position of the two bones. Don't make sure one is good and the other is crooked. No problem. I'll come. Behind Elder Melancilla, a disciple quickly followed. This guy seems to be bleeding internally, take off his shirt and let me take a look. No one responded this time. In fact, before anyone had time to respond, two mage hands flew out, automatically untied the injured man's clothes and began to apply oil on them. Well, the core of automatic scanning, automatic assistance, and automatic field control spells is really an unparalleled weapon for emergency situations in the battlefield. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Read the first chapter of the 10,000 word update above. There are 2 more chapters today. The cat is working hard on coding, and strives to complete an additional update of 10,000 words today. Beg. Moon. Ticket. Thanks to Ed for the 5,000 starting coins. Thanks to Ed Uchiha Kantetsu for the 1,500 starting coin reward. Thanks to Ed Subinjai, at the Little Rag Emperor No One Wants, at Genetically Modified Mice, at Did I Get Social Security, at Fankaiza for the 100 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1260. Greed presided over the treatment with all his strength. Elder Fahim's eyes were full of smiles, and he continued to treat the injured in accordance with Gretel's instructions. Behind the elder, the younger generation of elves, those in the healing field, came out one after another to help Gretel. Straightens broken bones, draws tendons, and heals muscles and bones. Later, the elves who came off the alchemy ship, although they were busy arranging prisoners of war, sorting out harvests, and packing the luggage brought from the ship, could not help but look back at the grass. It is very rare for a genius healer to show off his unique skills. If you can see more, see more, if you can learn more, learn more. Not only were the young elves watching, but so were the elders. Over the grassland, at the edge of the forest, a golden eagle with wings like gold has circled for the 3rd time. Gerard. You old guy. What are you doing hanging in the sky? Elder Masray suddenly raised his head and shouted. The next moment, the golden eagle let out a loud cry, folded its wings, and rushed down at the speed of light. Falling to the ground, he transformed into a tall middle-aged man. Teacher, you are back. Jalat Amastasha strode forward and saluted respectfully to the oldest elder, Colin, with a slight tremor in his voice. This time when I went to the elf secret realm, many legendary elders took the initiative to ask for help, but no one could compete with Elder Colin. Teacher, with the mentality of burying himself in a secret realm, he traveled across the ocean to pursue the glimmer of possibility. But now, the teacher can return safely, and the 2 old friends can also return safely. This is really great. He shook hands with Elder Masray and Elder Melancilla one by one, hugged each other, and touched each other's cheeks intimately. Finally, he walked to Elder Fahim, condensed a ball of water for him to rinse his hands, and said quietly. Is this the child? The girl from the Gemflower family, the son of little Iluni. SHHH. Elder Fahim made a sound of breath at him, still staring at the field, staring intently. Elder Jalat stopped talking and stared at the busy group of people on the grass, counting silently in his mind. The 7th treat minor injuries, the 8th treat minor injuries, the 9th, the 4th treat moderate injuries, the 2nd treat serious injuries. The more he looked, the higher his eyebrows rose. He clucked his tongue, and finally slapped Elder Fahim on the shoulder. "Old man, where did you find such a treasure? Did you see it?" Elder Fahim raised his eyebrows and smiled very proudly. "Hey, no matter whether little Greet is a child of the Gemflower family or not, no matter whether he has another teacher in the human world. Here with the elves, I am his teacher in the use of natural power. I'm the... Of course. This little guy, this skill is not easy," Elder Jalat said with a solemn expression. "You can't help but see that this hand can bring back at least twice as many soldiers on the battlefield. Full sight inspection. Mark the seriously injured patient. Mark the injured area. Automatically guided therapy to heal blood vessels. Then, whether you do the treatment yourself or call in a low-level healer, you will have the freedom to proceed calmly. This little guy's method can direct every bit of healing power to where it's needed most. In contrast, when they had few healers and many wounded, they would often throw out 2 or 3 group rejuvenation techniques, group medical techniques or group medical treatment techniques in one breath, and then waste at least half of them. Healing power. Hey, old guy, you can't hide such a good idea." Elder Jalat held Elder Fahim's shoulder and shook it hard twice. "You must teach me this method. Teach it to all the elders. All high-level healers. And all ancient trees." I just looked carefully. The little guy's oak staff can also cast spells, right? I can't make the decision. Elder Fahim simply spread his hands. Before Elder Jalat could spit, he continued in one breath. "Do you think I created this spell? If I teach you, I can give it to you. Is not it?" Elder Jalat stared at his old friend in surprise, looking up and down. He looked back and forth several times before looking back at Gretel. With a wave of his hand, a wind barrier surrounded the two of them, but he still lowered his voice. "Is it this little guy? He has just entered the high-level threshold. Not to mention creating such high-level spells, he has just started to treat moderate injuries in groups and group rejuvenation skills, and he may not be proficient at it." "That's him." Elder Fahim nodded with a smile, admiring the buzzing question mark above his old friend's forehead, and then slowly said after a long time. "Don't look at the weak fluctuations of this spell. It is a batch of healing spells, and it is a combination of the little guy's own healing spells. It won't work without any one of them. I am also slowly learning these self-created spells. Some of them still don't understand it." Seeing Elder Jalat standing frozen on the spot, his eyes and mouth slowly turning into 3 O shapes, Elder Fahim was satisfied and patted him on the shoulder gently. "In short, if you want to learn this spell, you should talk to the little guy yourself. By the way, it's best not to mention your family origin, your Xinhua family, Sci. What's wrong? That's little Aluni's cousin." Little Aluni struggled out of the tree and asked him to visit the child, but this boy Fanu, alas. Jalat Tasha was stunned. After listening to Elder Fahim's explanation of the cause and effect, a mouthful of blood was choked in my throat. I couldn't swallow it or vomit it out. He glanced around and saw Fanu Tasha cowering at the back of the team. He strode over and slapped him on the forehead, knocking him down on the spot. "You kid. Why are you so unreliable in your work? Grandpa 6. I know I was wrong, stop fighting." Gretel watched the interaction between the legendary elders, but did not put too much energy into it. He directed the elf healers to treat all the injured at the scene and check them one by one. After his own meditation core and oak staff had both been scanned, and he was sure that all the injured had been healed, he pulled out the oak staff, shrunk it and stuffed it into his pocket. Then, before even saying hello, Sarala, who had been waiting for a long time, rushed over. Greet! Greet! How do you want to eat that ghost snail? Gretel! He looked at the bright smiling face of the silver dragon girl, looked at the lobster soldiers carrying seaweed nets not far behind her, and then looked at the gorgeous sunset in the sky. His forehead slowly, a round drop of sweat rolled down. Sarala, do you want to eat that stuff tonight? Why don't we continue on our way? Sarala's expectant smile dimmed instantly. Seeing this situation, Elder Melancela coughed and stepped forward slowly. Ah, let's take a rest here today. Cecilia also needs to take a good rest, and the prisoners captured must also be handed over. Besides, the soldiers here fought a hard battle, what's the reward? Let's not talk about it, you have to take some good supplements. Eat delicious food. Eat delicious food. Sarala cheered. Behind him, the barbarian Bernard had strode forward, removed the big bone stick from his shoulder, and drew a giant machete in his hand. Miss Sarara, tell me, what are you going to eat tonight? I chop what I eat. I eat whatever I eat. I bake whatever I eat. Miss Sarara, as long as you say something, your target will be where my blade is headed. The ghost snail that Sarara caught was 5 to 6 meters tall, as big as a house. The shell of the snail is thick and hard, and the horns the size of fists are overlapped on the shell, which is not easy to mess with. At the opening at the end of the shell, there is a white carapace the size of a water tank, wrapping 6 light yellow arms and legs. Each arm and foot is as thick as an arm and a leg, more than 1 meter long. The thick skin on the outside is rough and tough, and it can be peeled off to look like armor. At this moment, the ghost snail was lying wilted in the center of the seaweed net, looking like it was finished. However, as Bernard strode forward with a machete in hand, one of his arms and legs suddenly swung out, ejecting a shadow more than 2 meters long. Chiang! Bernard swung his machete in his busy schedule and struck down with all his strength. The blade touched the wrist and foot, making a loud sound of metal and iron. Bernard leaned back and his feet sank more than 2 feet into the ground, almost to his knees. Boss, this ghost snail. Greet silently opened her mouth. Sarara, this thing you grabbed from the sea and asked to eat seems to be a high-level monster. Bernard looks like he can't handle it. Can you handle it? Bernard, get out of the way. Look at me. Sarala stood up eagerly. Wave vigorously and forcefully to let everyone around you disperse. Then, Miss Sarala turned into a silver dragon on the spot, roared angrily, and spurted out a mouthful of frost-white dragon breath. All I saw was click, 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 the ghost snail was frozen in place, its 6 arms and legs unable to retract. But before it could be completely retracted, a thick layer of ice had condensed on the arms and legs, freezing directly outside the shell. Then, the silver dragon took a running start, stepped forward, raised its claws high, and struck down with all its strength. Ouch! It stuck. Gretel, come here and help. Gretel stood far away, shaking his head and sighing. This ghost claw snail is frozen, but it is not dead. If you hit it, it will definitely resist. Among shellfish, the arms and legs outside the shell are the toughest. Sarala, you turned into a human form. You can pull it out when you turn back into a human form. Sarala said ayo, and with a flash of silver light, she transformed back into her elf form on the spot. He took a few steps back, his face flushed with anger. Bad guy. I can't cut it, I'll smash it to death. Gretel, wait a minute, I'll find a bigger rock. Gretel. Are you going to transform into a silver dragon form, grab the ghost claw snail high in the air, and then drop it to death? Do not. The carapace of such a high-level monster is very hard. How many times will you drop it? If there is a problem with the high-altitude drop and the snail is not killed, it will hit an elf or something first. Even if it doesn't hit people, it will hit other people's houses and flowers and plants, which is not good. With a big label of destroying nature stuck on your forehead, you are being ignored everywhere on Yangju Island. I am not happy to see you. Sarala, wait a minute, I want to think about how I can help you kill it and eat its meat. Elder, is the meat of this ghost claw snail edible? It's a prisoner. You can eat it if you want, or exchange it with the Sea Tribe. Elder Fahim looked at them with a smile. Hearing Greet's voice and asked, he walked over slowly. But if you want to eat it, you have to think of a way on your own. I won't kill it for you. Okay. We'll do it ourselves. Gretel is gearing up. Elder Fahim stepped aside and was immediately grabbed by Elder Jalat. That little silver dragon girl, is the little guy's sweetheart? You say, can I give you a set of legendary jewelry and exchange the spell with the little guy? Or get another weapon for his barbarian followers? Another set of armor? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Read the second chapter of the 10,000 word update above. There is another chapter today. It has reached the first place in the fantasy best-selling list, but it is still ranked 12th in the fantasy monthly ticket list. The cat is crying, please give me a monthly ticket. Beg. Moon. Ticket. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1261. Serial lightning. Serial lightning. Serial lightning. The pond was temporarily dug using fossils to mud and mud to stone and then covered with a layer of ice and filled with water. The volume of the pool has been carefully designed to allow the claw snail to be stuck in it upright and unable to move. Greet is responsible for designing the pool and digging the pit, while Sarala is responsible for pasting the ice, pushing the claw snails in, and filling it with sea water. Then, Greet had a row of test tubes on his left hand and a row of test tubes on his right hand, and began to output without thinking. Serial lightning. The 5 elders stood far away and pointed. Some people laughed, some shook their heads, and some sighed softly. Youth. Spending a lot of time just to get a bite of food from your female companion, probably only young people would be so excited. Then again, if they had such a beautiful silver dragon girl by their side when they were young, let alone killing ghost claw snails for her, even if they went to the sea to catch high-level monsters for her every day, that would be nothing. Elder Carrion and the others have been getting along with Gretel for several months, so they are not surprised. Elder Jalat's eyes widened again, and he calculated silently in his mind for a while, then turned to ask Elder Fahim. The power of his chain lightning is wrong. Has it jumped? What is that test tube in his hand? Ask for yourself, if you want to learn, if you want to exchange, come up with something yourself. The little guy has a lot of treasures in his hands. I'm curious about this, I want that, it just depends on how much you can spare. Elder Jalat silently shut up and began to check his collection. Hey, he still has a lot of good things in his hands. The question is, does this little guy like it? The gemstone flower family has not had many outstanding descendants for so many years. The resources that little Aluni's children can get from the family are probably indispensable. That cunning old guy Fahim has accumulated countless good things in the big forest for so many years. How can he stuff less of the juniors he values? There are also Karen, Melansila, Masray, even if the little guys didn't do anything else, just by extinguishing the flames of the elf secret realm, they spent all their wealth. It is estimated that they all yes. He needs to think about it, this little guy, what does he lack? What do you want? What can be guaranteed to impress him? Greet threw 20 or 30 streaks of lightning in succession, and finally felt clearly that the ghost claw snail in the puddle had no life breath. He shouted, and Cyrilla immediately stretched out her strong dragon claws and fished out the ghost-clawed snail out of the puddle. Bernard carried the machete and ran up happily. After Gretel blessed him with a bunch of strength and strength spells, and also blessed him with advanced sharpness skills on the machete, the barbarian was so angry that he raised his machete high. Hey! 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 Little Gretel, aren't you going to cut that snail? Elder Fahim walked over slowly and asked with a smile. Gretel looked horrified and shook his head rapidly. Why should I cut it? I'm a spellcaster. Aren't you a healer? Don't you often perform surgeries on people? Every white beard, white hair, and white eyebrow of Elder Fahim was written with. It's not a big deal to watch the excitement. When you encounter a tough surgical subject, you just say I can't cut it and then watch him die. This is a rare opportunity, why don't you go and cut it to practice? Gretel, T. Why do you come here to tease me when something like this happens? What good does bullying me do to you? But no matter what, Elder Fahim pointed out the need, and Cyrilla looked at him helplessly. Greet could only bite the bullet. After the barbarians cut and pried open a slit in the outer hard shell of the claw snail, Gretel rolled up his sleeves and pointed inside. Water-making technique. Water-making technique. Water-making technique. Water-making technique. Icicle technique. Click, click, click. The clear water poured into the shell of the ghost claw snail condensed into icicles, which were pushed upward and downward with force. The icicles released by Gretel are condensed using liquid nitrogen as the casting material, making them extremely strong. The 12 icicles worked together and actually opened a large crack in the shell of the claw snail, which was enough for a person to crawl in with his body hunched over. The mental power is very strong, the spell control is also good, and the rare thing is the rich imagination. Elder Jalat looked at it from a distance and nodded gently. This method of strengthening ice spells is also worth exchanging. Old friend, do you still have enough collections? Elder Fahim looked at him with gloating. It feels like if you continue to plan like this, not only will your warehouse be emptied out, but all the treasures you hung in the study and hidden under the bed in the bedroom will also be emptied. Am I doing it for myself? For my own sake, why should I look at this and that? Elder Jalat's two thick brown eyebrows stood straight up. Isn't it for the elves? Are these spells and knowledge required for me alone? No, I will go to the Elder's house and the Magic Academy when I get back and ask for a meeting. You should take it easy. Elder Fahim said in a low voice. Up to now, it is us elves who owe little Gretel, not little Greet who owes us. He almost didn't take anything that I, Kalian, and all of us wanted to give him. Elder Jalat. So help me see what he needs, Elder Jalat said angrily. Tisk, let's start the operation. This strength is a bit weak. Can we give him a little more strength? Let me think about it. Are there any medicines that can enhance his physique and strength? Is it possible that he doesn't lack strength, but is just too lazy to practice? Elder Fahim said slowly. Just recently, in the 2 advancements I saw with my own eyes, the children received a lot of gifts from the world, once to advance and once to refine their bodies. Then the physical strength should not be weak anymore. Based on what Ashu Isang has seen before and little Gretel's previous research, I have reason to suspect that every time he advances, he can be baptized by the world's gifts. Hiss. Elder Jalat gasped. He stood on tiptoe and took small steps closer to Gretel, watching carefully as he dissected the ghost claw snail. Pulled out of the hard shell of the ghost claw snail, the white and crystal clear snail meat is very strong and worthy of the status of a high-level warcraft. Gretel had already blessed himself with the higher barbarian bull power, and he was holding a strange-looking thin knife. Judging from the color of the blade, it seemed that fine gold had been added, and he was sweating while cutting. With his mouth pursed and his eyes widened, his arm muscles bulged and flattened again and again. After making a few cuts, he handed the knife to the mage's hand and tried his best to shake his arm. Not only is the strength lacking, but the endurance is also lacking. Elder Gelat's sharp eyes saw Greet rubbing his index finger, with a painful look on his face, and a deep red mark on his fingertip. Tisk, those with tender skin and tender flesh look like they have never done any rough work. Not to mention taking the warrior route, even if you take the spellcaster route, by the time you reach a high level, you will have calluses on your hands from copying scrolls, carving runes, and making magic items. After so many cuts, your hands will never hurt. Such a delicate little guy, what exactly should be given to him to send it to his heart and enhance his strength? Greet used all his strength to cut the ghost claw snail. At first, I just wanted to cut it into thin slices for Cyrilla to enjoy. You can also boil it or boil it. The most high-end ingredients often only require the simplest cooking method. But as he continued to cut and turn the blade, he couldn't help but begin to dissect its structure. Well, this muscle, this muscle, this muscle, the tube below is for filtered food. What about this group? Bah, they are all its eggs. Boss, boss. Cut faster, a thunderous shout called back his thoughts. The barbarian held a large bowl in one hand and a colander in the other. He pointed the bright spoon to the side. The water is almost boiling. Okay. You cut them into thin slices first, and I'll make the sauce. Greet took back the scalpel and ran out. Behind him, Elder Gelat shook his head and sighed. Those with poor qualifications will have medicine doctors, those with poor physical fitness will have medicine doctors, and those with poor physical strength and power. The elves have countless secret techniques that can pile people up even if they are hard to pile up. Only this lazy disease really has no cure. More than a dozen times of training with the world's gifts, strength, agility, and endurance have been built into a perfect body in all aspects. If he doesn't practice it himself, he won't be able to survive it. Ah! Speaking of which, is this barbarian, his follower? Elder Gelat quietly stepped back a few steps and returned to Elder Fahim. The level seems to be a little low, and it's not enough to protect him. I'll go back and ask the little guy, do you want help? I can't advance to legend, but I can still find a way to advance to half-step legend. You want to use the water from the world tree? Elder Fahim stared at him in surprise. Even if you want to get a quota for someone, you have to convene an elders meeting and spend more than 10 years of resources in exchange, right? During this time, your Xinghua family will not be promoted to warriors. Using the water from the world tree pool will only lead to half a step to legend at most. And unless there is a great opportunity, you will be stuck there for the rest of your life, unable to advance to legend. Elder Gelat smiled bitterly. I don't care about selling this old face. I'm afraid that the little guy won't see this opportunity. Such a child is destined to travel around. He must have a strong enough protector. I can't keep him on the island forever. Elder Fahim sighed softly. On the other side, Bernard's machete was flying in his hand, and he had cut the ghost claw snail into translucent thin slices. Pour it into the pot, and as the boiling water rolls up and down, a rich and delicious fragrance will soon float out. Miss Sarah. Boss. Come and eat. Coming. Greet ran over carrying a big bowl. Half a bowl of freshly prepared sauce was placed in front of Sarah. The freshly cooked conch slices were rolled in it, and the golden red clear sauce flowed down drop by drop, like a pattern splashed on the snow-white conch slices, which was particularly attractive. Appetite. Sarah, try it. Elder Fahim, Elder Colin, Elder Masray, Elder Melinthra, let's all eat together. This snail meat tastes really good. And everyone. High-level monster meat is a rare thing to eat. Recuperate your body and make up for the shortcomings. You have just been injured, so you should have a big meal. The barbarian was already holding a big bowl and couldn't wait to put half of his face into it. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of Read the third chapter of the 10,000 word update above. The 10,000 word update has been completed. It has reached the number 1 spot on the fantasy best-selling list, and has just climbed to the 10th place on the fantasy monthly ticket list. The cat cried and rolled around, stretching out its little pink paws to ask for monthly votes. Beg. Moon. Ticket. Thanks to @Uchiha Kentetsu for the 117 starting coins. Thanks to @BookFriend 20210426015345606, @Ajad for the 100 starting coins reward. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1262. A vigorous seafood conference was held on the beach. The elves, whether they were the legendary disciples returning by boat, the patrols stationed on the beach, or the surrounding villagers who came to help urgently, all sat together closely. I'll make a bonfire. I'm going to get firewood. I know the terrain around here best. I can find dead trees wherever I look. Fossils turn into mud. Turn mud into stone. Bring these shells up and bake them. They will be delicious. I'm going to get the pot from home. And the baking fork. They set up a bonfire on the beach, hung magic flames, set up pots and pans, laid out stone slabs, mixed sauces, ground spice powder, and made all preparations for cooking. Although the captured swordfish and tuna cannot be eaten, other fish and shrimps that died in the battle, were thrown ashore, were dying, or were already dead are the objects of feasting. Sarah manipulated the water waves to roll the thinly sliced snails twice in the boiling water, then floated them in the sauce bowl and immediately flew to her lips. The rich and fragrant taste exploded on the tip of the tongue, and the silver dragon girl squinted her eyes as she ate. Bernard had a bowl of snail meat in one hand and a grilled fish longer than his arm in the other. He ate it from side to side until his beard was covered with sauce. After eating a large amount of high-level monster meat in a short time, the barbarian's body was steaming with heat, and every muscle was bulging. Idion jumped in front of the stone slab and waved the 2 elven moon blades into a ball of silver light. Swish, brush, 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 brush. The king squid, which was as tall as a hill, had arms and legs that were as thick as a person and tens of meters long, and he cut them into filaments half a foot long and as thick as a finger. Ashuedge stood opposite the chopping board. After Idion cut a bunch, she picked up a bunch and ran to send it to be baked. Even the elf warriors who had been seriously injured and had just been lifted up by healing techniques joined in the busyness. Those who are strong can help cut the meat and grill the meat, while those who are not strong can help make sauces and clean the barbecue grill. Those who are really weak can at least watch the fire by the pot. By the way, if you see a piece of fish, shrimp, or crab legs that is cooked, if you have a quick eye or a quick hand, grab it and eat it. After eating a large amount of monster meat, his pale cheeks became a little more red, and his body was boiling with energy and blood. Soon, among the sluggish wounded soldiers in the camp, there was a lot of laughter, and some people began to brag loudly. You know, when those lobster claws came at me. Greed walked slowly on the beach, filling up half a bowl of soup here, taking a roasted squid leg there, changing the fire and getting 2 roasted shells, and quickly filled his stomach. He walked forward along the fire and soon discovered that the flow of people on the beach was flowing in the same direction. Over there, 3 tall black figures were lined up. Greed walked over quickly and saw 3 ancient trees of different shapes, centered on Sicilia, occupying half of the beach. Either upright, or lying down, or the crown of the tree spreads out as much as possible, or the trunk goes straight up and down, forming a fat lump, with only a few branches sprouting from the top. The elves held a string of floating saucers in their hands, or held them directly with floating magic, or simply woven baskets with vines to transport large quantities of ingredients to the ancient tree. Some of them are ready, put them into a separate plate or a pot, and give them to the alchemy tree ship Cecilia. Cecilia stretched out a long branch, with thick round leaves on the top. When it was full, it retracted into the trunk and disappeared. Some lobsters, crabs, and murlocs who had been killed by fireballs, electrocuted, poisoned, or killed by other methods gathered together, crashed, and fell on the roots of the three ancient trees. As soon as a batch was poured down, tree roots quickly sprang out, and countless small roots stretched out from the main root to wrap up the corpses. Then the sand, gravel, or soil would naturally roll over and cover up these dead people. Soon, the ground became flat and nothing could be seen. "Sister Cecilia, are you eating?" Greed placed a roasted squid leg that he had been holding up in his hand, which he couldn't eat anymore, on Cecilia's round blade, and reached out to touch the blade. The leaves shook slightly, and soon, the gentle voice of the ancient tree came from Greed's consciousness. "Yes. These monsters and sea beasts are also a big meal for us. After eating one meal, we can save a lot at least for half a year, we don't have to think about finding food, and we can also help our lovely children clean up. The environment benefits everyone, right?" It turns out that ancient trees can also accumulate energy in this way. Gretel's eyes were opened to the fact that animal carcasses rot in the ground and are decomposed by bacteria to form humus, which enters the natural cycle and is naturally absorbed by the vegetation. However, you can bury it directly and eat it directly, and you don't care about the species, carapace, or toxins. Obviously, the ancient trees have special tricks for this way of eating. Gretel's eyes lit up. He quickly took out the oak stick from his chest pocket, shook it, turned it into the shape of an eyebrow stick, and inserted it into the ground. Holding the oak staff in one hand and touching Cecilia's branch with the other. "Sister Cecilia, can you teach it? It's rare to have such a big meal, let's eat it together." A series of soft, gentle laughter sounded in the consciousness. The ancient tree branched off a branch and lightly placed it on the body of the oak staff. Gretel breathed a sigh of relief and patted the oak staff. "You're studying here. I'll get you something to eat." Saying that, he ran away. Behind him, two branches sprang out from the oak staff, whirring and waving like windmills, almost hitting Gretel on the back. From a distance, the legendary elders who were paying attention to Gretel all showed uncontrollable smiles. This feast lasted until the moon passed the midpoint and ended. Gretel followed the mage's habit of falling asleep early. When he woke up the next morning, the beach had been cleared. The digestive ability of ancient trees is truly amazing. Even Gretel's oak staff looked full of energy, and its branches and leaves were a bit green. The only change is that it branches out into 13 branches at the top of the trunk, and a cluster of oak leaves grows on each branch. The leaves are thick and strong, dark green and shiny, and there are clusters of acorns. No matter how Gretel communicated, the oak stick stood straight there, refusing to shrink back to the size of a pencil. "Hey, are you full?" Gretel touched it. The oak stick shook the tree trunk, and the oak leaves made a tiny rustling sound, but they still refused to deform. "Oh, okay, if it doesn't change, it won't change. Come on, I'll find a way to carry you." Greed quickly summoned a floating saucer, raised the oak staff horizontally, and then summoned several activation ropes to tie it up. The oak staff waved its branches angrily, but Greed was well prepared, jumped back, and dodged by a hair's breadth. Not only the oak staff was overstretched, but also several other ancient trees. Greed suspected that they were overstretched. Elder Carrion's wooden staff, correction, the tree man, walked struttingly in the team, making a rumbling sound with every step he took. Elder Gelat's ancient tree, although slightly slender, has salt water flowing on every branch. It is obvious that the salt content of last night's feast was too high. And Ms. Cecilia, the alchemy tree boat, turned into a huge boat at this time, with dozens of wooden oars protruding from both sides, paddling up the river one by one. Two long branches stretched out from the side of the ship. The other two ancient trees each held a branch. When encountering a place with fast water and a large drop, they would pull it hard to help Ms. Cecilia go against the current. Greet, how about you come down and walk by yourself? You see other people's ancient trees, they all walk by themselves. The oak staff angrily swung two branches at him. The group of people walked slowly and leisurely along the river for 2 days. The river turned into a stream, the stream turned into a mountain spring, and Cecilia finally transformed from a boat into a tree man, walking among the crowd. After climbing 7 or 8 hills in a row, my eyes suddenly opened up. Cyrilla rode the unicorn hero, and Gretel and Bernard rode Appa together. They stood on a towering mountain ridge and looked down. It's so beautiful here. Green mountains, dense forests, surrounded by a clear lake. The lake reflects the blue sky, white clouds float leisurely in the water, the lakeside hills are undulating, the grass is gentle, and villages are scattered around like flowers. It is quiet and peaceful to the core. Looking along the direction of the mountains, a towering peak rises from the ground and stands at the end of the mountains. At the top of the mountain, there are countless tall trees intertwined with each other, supporting each other, pointing straight to the sky. Even from dozens of miles away, you can still see the tangled tree body, which is almost as thick as the top of the mountain. The thick trunk was pulled up, and the branches spread out, supporting a building, a building. A palace. A city. Gretel rubbed his eyes, blessed himself with the eagle eye technique, and rubbed his eyes again. Elder Fahim had slowly come to him and pointed to the mountain peak. That's the Elf King's Court, the essence of the entire Eternal Meeting Island. What the World Tree and the ancient trees hold up are the palaces of the elf royal family, and the roots of the trees penetrate deeply into the well of eternity. On the hillside below, 12 elven nobles, living around the royal court. The spring water flowing down from the mountain peak flows into the Emerald Lake, nourishing our compatriots. The Elves Magic Academy, Warrior Academy, and academies that raise and educate young elves are all around the Emerald Lake. This fertile land surrounded by mountains is home to about 1/3 of the elven population. Of course, there are also many freedom-loving elves living in further forests, lakesides, and even on the South Island. Now, do you want to go to the Magic Academy first or go to the Elf King's Court first? Gretel turned his head back and forth, looking up at the huge world tree for a while, and then overlooking the quiet villages and lakes for a while. Soon, he stared at the ancient trees around the world tree, which were like supports and guards. Is my mother in a certain ancient tree? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Keep asking for monthly votes. Please be on the fantasy monthly ticket list again. Thanks to @Scarlacy for the 1,500 starting coins. Thanks to @Yuhan Deozia for Nature, @No11 City, @Ya and Yes Yeah for the 100 starting coins reward. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1263. Upon hearing Gretel's question, Elder Fahim's expression immediately became serious. He raised his gaze and looked at the towering giant tree on the top of the mountain in the distance, and remained silent for a long time. When he was young, he also studied in the Magic Academy, studied with the elders of Wangting, and visited the Well of Eternity with the elders. The Well of Eternity relies almost entirely on the guidance and sorting of the world tree and ancient trees to calm down the violent energy and supply it to various settlements on Yangju Island and the Mystery Chain. The price is that the branches of the world tree that guide the Well of Eternity, as well as the ancient trees, bear the impact of the Well of Eternity almost all the time, becoming increasingly painful and manic. As a last resort, another group of elves must be kept to comfort them for a long time. Elder Fahim has always been disapproving of this method of utilizing energy. The Well of Eternity should be Lady Silvery Moon's gift to the elves. It should be soft, peaceful, and kind. In any case, it should not be at the expense of a group of ancient trees and certain elves, not to mention that the elves had previously caused great losses and sacrifices by torturing the Well of Eternity. Back then, it was because of such different opinions that Elder Fahim traveled across the ocean and went on duty in the forest. Soothing trees, calming nature, and healing creatures gradually became a legend there. Now, if the problem of the elf secret realm had not been solved and the natural wounds had been healed, even if little Gretel had not come to Evermeet Island, Elder Fahim would not have even come back with the brigade. Legend. Evermeet Island lacks legends. Even if he is missing, he is not missing. He has been in the elf forest for hundreds of years. What's wrong with letting him stay in that big forest forever and give all his power back to nature? However, facing Greet's clear, expectant, and somewhat worried eyes, Elder Fahim could not pour out these different opinions. In the end, he just sighed and patted Gretel on the shoulder. Don't worry. Comforting the ancient tree is not as painful as you think. You will know when you arrive at the royal court and see your mother. Since Greet also wanted to go to the royal court first, the group did not split into two groups, but walked along the ridge towards the mountain peaks and giant trees. As they journey, monsters are constantly joining them. The unicorn stood quietly on the mountain path, lowered its head, seeking the caress of the elf elders, and let them ride on its back. The tame somber, Sika deer, and moon deer come out of the forest and take the initiative to become the mounts of the elves, or carry their luggage for them. The big golden red bird, with its long and gorgeous tail feathers, flew over the heads of the elves, guiding them on the way. A little bird with bright blue feathers, holding a red fruit in its mouth, placed it next to the elves, and then pecked the grass seeds from their palms. I've been welcomed by so many monsters along the way, and I'm embarrassed to hunt. Sarala also received a small pile of fruits. Birds brought berries, monkeys brought fruit-bearing branches, and squirrels brought nuts. Although they were not fruits made from magic plants and were rich in energy, they still made her smile happily. Fortunately, I saved a lot at the beach 2 days ago, you said, those seafood. No, why do the sea people come to fight the elves? How do I know this? Greet spread his hands. Yangju Island is a vast and sparsely populated island. In the past few days, the number of monsters I saw was more than 10 times the number of elves I saw. Ordinarily, the sea people live in the sea and the elves live on the land. Even if the two sides compete for resources, they shouldn't compete in the same pot. So, why do we have to attack despite being bombarded by the cryptozoology? He cast doubtful eyes on Elder Fahim, but saw Elder Fahim frowning slightly, as if there was some problem that he couldn't solve at all. Since the elder didn't say anything, Gretel didn't ask any questions. He just followed the team silently and observed the surroundings silently. The natural power on Yangju Island is even stronger than that of the elf forest. Although the elf forest is a tropical rainforest environment, the trees are extremely dense, the vines and flowers on the trees are always in bloom, and the species are extremely rich. But on Evermeet Island, Greet had the feeling that his whole body was immersed in the power of nature. Take a breath, and your lungs will feel like they have been washed by a clear spring. Spread your arms and move, and all the 18,000 pores will relax, as if you have taken a light green bath. The trees around him, including oak trees, pine trees, green oak trees, spruce trees, and some giant trees he didn't recognize, were towering to the sky. From the trunk to the treetops, there is a faint magical power flowing. During Gretel's journey, he used his mental power to communicate with them, and could hear their voices rising and falling one after another. The density of powerful, spiritual trees was dozens of times denser than the elf forest and the ancient trees he felt when he robbed the gold transport convoy on the isthmus. The trees here have grown for hundreds or more than 1,000 years, and they are everywhere. While he was deep in thought, Elder Melancilla suddenly urged a somber deer to rush to him. These are ancient trees full of spirituality. If you want to choose an ancient tree partner or enlighten a tree guard, you can easily find them by walking around in the forest. I think they should be very willing to follow you. Walk. On the floating saucer behind Gretel, the oak staff suddenly extended its roots and rested on Gretel's shoulders. With a strong tug, Gretel was pushed back, and with a swish, it turned into a pencil shape and got into Gretel's chest pocket. 13 leaves on the top of the oak stick swayed, making a rustling sound that was far larger than its own size. Mine. Mine. Gretel is mine. Don't go looking for other ancient trees. Elder Melancilla could not help but curl her lips. She flicked her fingers, and a green stream of light was thrown in front of Gretel and landed on the oak staff. Even if you don't sign a contract with other ancient trees, you can still chat with them more during your time on Yangju Island. These ancient trees have extremely long lifespans and have seen many things. Many times, young elves in the Magic Academy, we must learn from them. She stretched out her white and plump palms and touched the oak staff. This little guy, it will be very beneficial if you let him chat more with the ancient trees and learn more things. Greet bowed slightly to her gratefully. Immediately, he picked up the pencil-like oak stick and pressed its top with his thumb. Did you hear that? Then you will learn more from them. 13 green leaves drooped down dejectedly, as if they were completely dehydrated. Greet sat comfortably on the back of the silver moon deer, enjoying the feeling of being immersed in the power of nature. However, the further he walked and the closer he got to the royal court, the more strange he felt. All around, the fluctuations of natural power brought with it a strange smell. You feel it too? Elder Carrion suddenly asked him. Greet sat up straight, then collapsed again with great effort. The silver moon deer's back is at least half a meter taller than the unicorn that Elder Colin is riding. No matter how hard he tried to sit up straight, there would be no more conversation for the day. Yes, something is wrong with the force of nature here, Greet said, looking around with a confused tone. At first, he thought it was due to changes in terrain. The closer he got to Wangting, or in other words, the closer he got to the mountain where Wangting was located, the higher the altitude, and the poorer the surrounding vegetation. The green trees turned into gray-brown shrubs, then into creeping meadows, and soon, into large chunks of exposed rock. The ground beneath your feet is weathered and crumbled, with gravel and silt beneath your feet. The air is filled with a faint smell of sulfur. The mountain where the royal court is located, that mountain was once a volcano, Greet said hesitantly. At this time, they had arrived at the foot of Wangting Mountain, and could see the entire mountain where the elf Wangting was located without any cover. The entire mountain appears to be conical in shape, with the top flattened, or presenting a circular bell mouth. There is the smell of sulfur around, porous volcanic pumice, dense and hard flint, and traces of what seems to be mud flowing. Walking all the way, the spring in the mountain was vaguely bubbling. Putting the well of eternity, no, a nuclear reactor on a volcano. Elves, your imagination is allowed. If this volcano erupts and nuclear material is thrown around and leaked, why not destroy the entire island? It is indeed a volcano. Elder Carrion's eyebrows stretched, obviously happy with his observation skills. After a pause, he said, "The Well of Eternity is a device that uses energy efficiently. Ever since the Well of Eternity was placed here, a large amount of the energy of the volcano has been extracted by it and transformed into the magic core that supports Evergem Island. We don't even have to use the energy of the forest. But recently, there has been a problem with the Well of Eternity, and the ancient trees have become more and more irritated, twisted, violent," Greet asked tentatively. Elder Carrion sighed and looked up. "Your perception is very accurate. Let's be careful. I feel that the world tree above is a little uncontrollable." Just as he was talking, there was a sudden tremor in front of him, and the huge tree holding up the royal court shook. It seemed to bend down, and then it seemed to fall down. Elder Carrion exclaimed not good, jumped up, turned into a golden eagle, spread its wings and flew towards the mountain. Behind him, Elders Masray, Melancilla, and even Elders Jalat and Fahim all transformed into various birds and rushed toward the giant tree standing on the top of the mountain like sharp arrows. Gretel's breath hitched. The movement just now felt like a black cloud, weighing heavily on his head, and half of the sky was black. Such a powerful ancient tree loses its temper. Can the elders rush over and control it? Will it hurt? The elves who are sleeping and meditating in the ancient tree to appease the ancient tree, including the original mother, will they be injured? Are they okay now? He urged the silver moon deer to run towards the mountain peak. After running a few steps, Apple let out a long hiss and stood up. A gentle and strong arm has already hugged Silver Moon Deer's neck. Gretel, don't worry. Wait. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of